Alright, well, it's movie review time, guys, and this time it's one of the biggest movies that I've been looking forward to, Man of Steel. Now, I got really nervous recently when I checked over on Rotten Tomatoes before I saw this movie. I'm seeing negative reviews. I'm hearing all these different things about how this movie is disappointing, that basically it's a fail. You know, it's got a 58% over on Rotten Tomatoes a couple of days ago. And to say the least, I was still going to see the movie because, you know, being a big-time superhero fan, and, you know, I just have to see it. Now, it's not everybody was saying it was bad, but to say it was a mixed bag would be an understatement. There were some critics downright ripping this movie apart. And to that, I got to say that's very unfortunate. And it's very unfortunate that a lot of people are not going to see this movie based on the negative reviews. Because a lot of people, when they open up the paper, say, boom, bad review, they ain't going to go see it. And that's a real shame because this is a quality movie. And while I'm not going to go ahead and say it's better than the 1978 Superman with Christopher Reeves, this movie definitely is very good and very worthy of being a Superman movie because they did just such a great job with this. And Henry Cavill, you know, I wasn't a big fan of him in The Immortals, but, you know, does a great job as Clark Kent, Superman in this. It's a very different take. And let me explain. I'm not gonna, you know, bash the critics and say they're idiots. Some of them were. Some of the claims of this movie are just downright ridiculous. But I ain't gonna go overboard. I'm gonna just give my take on it. Because the movie might very well be classified as an acquired taste. Because it definitely isn't like any other Superman movie I've seen. And very different than other superhero movies. Now, some people might say that because one of the producers happens to be Christopher Nolan, that it could be compared to the Dark Knight franchise. And you could do that. But it's even very much different than that. It's just a very different type of movie, and definitely, without a doubt, the odd man out on all Superman productions in general, including Smallville and all that. The movie is very dark. It has a dark tone, and a lot of critics can criticize it heavily for not being quote unquote fun. One in particular being Richard Roper, a man that I kind of respect his opinions on movies, and, you know, being very into film, taking quite a few film classes in college. You know, when I look at a movie, I look at it from a lot of different perspectives. And, you know, and I like to see what a lot of other top reputable critics have to say about that movie versus my own. Because, you know, you guys know I got some opinions that may not be popular. There's a lot of people who agree with my opinions, and there's a lot of people that hate me for my opinions. Let's just be honest, you know. And the opinions towards this movie that were mostly negative were that they probably didn't understand or appreciate what Zack Snyder and Christopher Nolan were going for here. Now, obviously, Snyder was heavily influenced by the Dark Knight films, and of course, with Nolan being, you know, a part of this, I don't really know that much, how much input he had in this film. But, you know, it was probably considerable, to say the least, because you could definitely see the work of Nolan in this film. It's a very dark tone. You know, Superman's way about things, you know, the mindset of a lot of the characters. It's dark. It's realistic, to say the least. If we're going to talk about realism, you know, now I know it's about a guy that flies around in fucking pajamas, basically, so realistic. But the attitudes of human beings yes, this movie is definitely 10 times more realistic than Superman in 1978 with Christopher Reeve. It's, it's darker, you always hear the world is an ugly place, and that is definitely, planet Earth is an ugly place on here. Superman is judged, in 1978, Superman comes about, this flying, dude just pops out of nowhere, saves somebody, and, lo and behold, the guy is revered as a worldwide hero. However, in this movie, he is not. He's actually treated as a criminal when he first comes down to the planet. He's judged. You see that kids are bullying him. They are downright making fun of him. He's having a tough time. It almost borrows a page from Spider-Man, but not ripping it off or anything. You see a lot, and the movie really spoke to me. And that, it was just because it had a very epic feel to it. It's indescribable. Superman it's a big character. And, when Superman Returns ended up sucking, I was very upset. The 1978 movie is one of my favorite films of all time. I hold it near and dear to my heart. It's a movie that my father loves, I love, so it means a lot. It's a great film. It's a tremendous film, and it's a very fun, entertaining, funny movie, and pretty much the critics agreed that that one was a classic. Superman Returns came along and pretty much fucked up the franchise big time, especially because it was made as a sequel to that very movie. It was in that lineage of, Superman films continuing on from Christopher Reeve. Brandon Routh was supposed to be the successor to Christopher Reeve. And that's the thing. This movie is very different. The performance is very different. It just is. It's a lot darker of a tone. Now, a lot of people will say, don't confuse these words, melancholy and dark. Usually people, when something's brooding and dark, people associate that with boring. Depends on how you look at it, but Brandon Routh was the one where it was just moody and boring, sort of like a teenager. Basically Superman Returns was a very, teenager, depressing type of movie where not a lot happened and just nothing was entertaining. But that's the problem here. What I was getting at before was this word fun that they used in Richard Roper's review. Fun. Fun, what do they mean by fun? Typically, I would associate the word fun with entertaining. And I don't really see, I kind of see where he was coming from. I think what they meant was when they said fun, they meant that it wasn't, fun. Like, Superman in 1978 was loose. It was funny. There was, a lot of jokes with Christopher Reeve acting all nerdy. And the thing is, this movie is not about that. Not once is the movie cheesy or goes for cheap laughs and, goofiness, which is, cheap laughs. And Superman from 1978 was guilty of that. I'm not saying that that's a bad thing. Sometimes, goofy, goofball characters are funny. But this, they wanted him to be tough. They wanted him to be a little bit more straight-laced, but he doesn't come off as boring. Actually, he's got that tough guy charisma about him. There's something about him. The presence was definitely felt. And there was a lot of scenes, that were quite emotional. I saw a lot of criticism towards the movie that's saying that the movie lacked emotion. It just didn't connect with the audience. And, I don't know. A lot of times, this is very funny about critics, that they will say something in their review, and it's really like you want to say, speak for yourself, because they don't know what a lot of other people are thinking. Something that doesn't speak to them, it will speak to hundreds, thousands, millions of others. They really wouldn't know because the movie just came out. And maybe, where they watched the movie in that particular screening of the film, people didn't react so well. But, it was pretty enjoyable. My friends that I went with greatly enjoyed the film and definitely remarked on how much better it was than Superman Returns. It was 100 times better. It just was. And, and just a lot of the moments, they felt so epic in this movie that it was like, yeah, and a lot of it really did speak to me. And a lot of the moments with the flashbacks, it was like it was making the hairs on my arms like stand up. It was like exciting. Haven't felt like that in a while about a film. It was good. It was a very strong, powerful type of movie making here. And the characters about it, the characters in Superman Returns was a disaster. And, some people might say that it's not even fair to compare the two. And, I might even admit that a little bit. Maybe it's not completely fair because Superman Returns and the Man of Steel have two differently complete ways of doing business here. Superman Returns tried to be too much like Superman from 1978. It tried to continue like it was a sequel, but didn't have the elements there. It was acting. Brandon Routh was trying to act like Christopher Reeve and just couldn't get the job done. It was a miserable failure. Kevin Spacey, tried to do a more serious Lex Luthor, and it didn't come off right. It wasn't the right, trying to present a film, that's supposed to be from a totally different era. They were trying to do a movie from fucking 30 years ago. And it didn't work because you can't just insert different actors and expect the movie to pick up right where it left off and to be a total success. But the thing is, what's so funny is, and you could even check this on Rotten Tomatoes, Wiki, Google it, whatever you have to do. People, critics, fans loved Superman Returns. They clapped. They loved it. They said what a remarkable film it was. And at the time, I even admitted that it was okay. But then I bought this Superman tin that they were selling years ago with all the films in it and watched it again. And I have to say that, on that second viewing, I went from just saying it was okay. I was disappointed. I was in the minority of the people at the time that admitted that they were disappointed. And I could see why people might have forced themselves to like it. Because, to wait so long for a new Superman movie and for it to end up sucking, you're going to try as hard as you can to scrape up the bits and pieces that were good. Now, there might have been a few, moments that were, good in Superman Returns. But as a whole, it was not good. It was pretty bad in retrospect, looking back on it. And I even admitted that at the time. I have no way of proving that. But the critics are guilty of, some people even going so far as giving the movie 4 stars, giving it rave reviews, saying it was epic, worthy of its, title as a sequel to the Christopher Reeve. People were saying that he channeled Christopher Reeve, that, the man was basically stepping into his shoes and walking just like Christopher Reeve was. And I knew right there that that was bullshit. Because Christopher Reeve was a charismatic, funny guy, and he was unnatural as Clark Kent. The man just had a way about him where you could see, like, the differences between Clark Kent and the differences between Superman. Nerdy Clark Kent, goofy, tripping, doing all spilling shit on himself, and then he was Superman. He was a tough guy, and it was just, a good separation of those two characters that are really one person, and it was a success. You know, right here, what's done with Henry Cavill is completely different. They don't show a lot of him as, you know, Clark Kent. He's mostly Superman. They don't show him working at the, you know, the Daily Planet. It's done in a totally different way. His childhood is dealt with flashbacks. And, you know, as a child, you could see the struggle of him being different. It was, you know, very Smallville-ish in a way, which is a very good thing, because I'm a big fan of Smallville, and I thought that it showed, you know, Clark's trying to fit in with the rest of society without others finding out. And there's a lot of people who do find out his identity in this movie. The whole fucking military pretty much knows who he is, knows that he's an alien. Lois Lane finds out pretty much right away who he is. You know, but you know, I don't really have a problem with that. It was handled in such a way that, you know, it was perfectly acceptable. Not everybody knows who he is, but a lot more people than in previous Superman works, you know who he is. They know his secret identity. And some people might complain, and they might have valid points on that. I can see where they're coming from on that. There's complaints there. I've heard complaints, but for the most part, I'm not a complainer. I don't have a problem with that. It doesn't bother me. Now, on the subject of, you know, the other casting, I already said that Henry Cavill's a good choice. Superman did a good job. Now, however, Kate Bosworth in Superman Returns was fucking awful. She was annoying, a fucking joke. Now, there's also people who didn't like Margaret Kidder, and I really enjoyed her performance. She was like Lois Lane in the comics, smarky, sarcastic, making fun of Clark Kent. It was a very good performance. You know, maybe some people might call it an infamous performance. Other people would say it was a great performance. I was one of the ones who said that it was great, a classic performance. I enjoyed her. You know, now this new Lois Lane, Amy Adams, is not great, but she's more useful. Kate Bosworth, not only was she not that great of an actress, but she just seemed downright worthless, you know, in fucking Superman Returns. Just seemed worthless. Just was there, getting in the way, just a damsel in distress, you know, but that's not the way it's supposed to be with Lois. Lois is supposed to, you know, be a little bit more savvy, you know, a little bit more resourceful. And she comes off that way in this movie. The way how she helps out Superman, she gains valuable information. She doesn't come off as stupid, worthless as a bimbo. Kate Bosworth came off as a total fucking bimbo in Superman Returns. And, you know, it was, you know, the feminist movement who, you know, usually likes to bash, you know, women being exploited as dumbasses in movies. Well, Superman Returns was pretty much the poster boy for that type of bullshit. So, you know, that was dumb that they went that route. And it was also another reason why that movie wasn't good. It just took a, you know, a great character like Lois Lane, a classic character, and made her secondary. Now, she might be secondary to Superman, of course, but she shouldn't. She's supposed to be right there by Superman's side, like a great sidekick for Superman, an unofficial sidekick. And in this movie, they do make her look like she's worthy of helping Superman out. She comes off as intelligent. She's not the most charismatic. You know, granted, it's a different style. They try to make her a little bit more smarky and sarcastic. You know, I get that from her, but it's not much. Probably could have used a little bit more of that Margaret Kidder in her, but, you know, didn't really get to that point. But, you know, she was pretty good for what she was. Not really going to complain too much about that. She was good, and it was better. You know, definitely... you know, just a credible performance, basically. Who else we got in this movie to talk about? You know, Kevin Costner in there as you know, Clark Kent's father, and you know, it's good. You know, that was a good casting there. I mean, Kevin Costner, one of the biggest movie stars of all time, and those flashbacks, he's good, and it helps. It shows, you know, a lot of emotion. It's a good fucking cast. Michael Shannon is Zod. I think he does a good job. This guy's catching a lot of flack, but Zod, you know, you might say that you didn't like who they picked or whatever, but I liked them. Looked good. Maybe not not as good of a face as Terrence Stamp. I think maybe Terrence Stamp had a more evil face, but you know, Terrence Stamp wasn't exactly, you know, a big guy with you know, that seemed intimidating. He had an intimidating face, but the body wasn't there, and the outfit was pretty damn cheap. Even for that time, they could have done a little bit better in the way of costumes for that film. But this movie, decked out in sweet ass armor and shit like that, it was great. And the fight scenes, holy shit, the fight scenes with Zod looked like a fucking $1,000,000. You know, worth every penny for those special effects. And speaking of special effects, there were a lot of moments in Superman Returns where they were showing, you know, Brandon Routh, and he didn't even seem like he was there. All computerized, too much computerized stuff that was quite obvious. In this film, they implement him into the special effects, and it looks pretty damn fucking real. And it came off as, you know, believable. It looked good. I was willing to suspend my disbelief for this film, and that was a very good sign. Pleased to see that. You know, the special effects in this movie, they're quality. In the fight scenes, they just, you know, this was a big challenge for Superman. Look threatened in the movie. You know, it wasn't easy. You didn't have that moment like, you know, just, I don't know, in the previous films, it never looked like Superman was really in any danger. Like, even in 1970, like, you know, it was pretty much probably because Lex Luthor was such a goofy type of villain. It was a more comedic approach. This is no laughs and anything. These are brutal, violent fight scenes. And that's what a lot of people probably didn't like about this, is that it was too dark, too violent for Superman. Superman is usually not like Batman in the comics. Usually it's a little bit more lighthearted. There's more jokes. Superman sometimes cracks some one-liners. You know, he did that back in the old series that started in the 50s with George Reeves. You know, you know, those classic, sometimes cheesy one-liners where they'd all laugh at the end, basically. So, you know, that's all gone. And it's a very serious, dark film. And the part where he kills Zod, snaps his neck, and anybody who wants to call himself a fan of Superman knows this. Superman doesn't kill anybody. The fact that he had that challenge, that if he didn't snap his neck, he was in a position where he couldn't get to him in any other way, and he had to kill Zod to save some, you know, innocent civilians. It was just an epic moment. Never have I seen anything like that in any Superman movie. Edge of your seat. Superman kills somebody in a pretty brutal fashion. And that is going to be talked about for some time. I can see the debates coming on that one. Yeah, so overall, you know, Dave, I wanted to make this review a little bit longer than usually, because I had a lot to say on this film, and I had to speak about it in a much broader fashion, because the movie definitely deserves a longer review. It's a great film. It's an epic film. It's such a well done movie. It's such a different approach, and I appreciate the fact that they were willing to give us something different. I fucking hate the fact that they're rebooting this series, but this is acceptable. They presented this story in a different way. they change things. You know, the fact that the suit is ready and it's like it's his destiny. It's already waiting for him there on Earth instead of, you know, Martha Kent basically making it out of a blanket that was tucked in his spaceship. It you know, that has its charm to it. You might say, oh, that's cute. But in this, the suit's there. It's very armor looking. It's pretty damn sweet. And just, you know, just every little touch in this film, it definitely deserves to be nitpicked a little bit, just like everything. Everything is open to criticism. And, you know, I've already said my criticisms, but for the most part, the movie is good. Is it a classic? Yeah, I think it is. I think it's definitely a movie that deserves to be remembered and revered, you know, and talked about for a while. It's better than The Dark Knight Rises. It's better filmed than that from, you know, if you're going to talk about works from Nolan, it definitely is way more appealing. And I think that's more acceptable than that film. You know, that film in Dark Knight Rises, they made a lot of mistakes that I didn't even touch in my review. I made a very quick review on that a while back, but I think I need to go back, watch it again, and review that one too. Because I didn't really say enough on Dark Knight Rises. That one did disappoint in a lot of ways. This Man of Steel, I gotta say, I really wasn't that disappointed. I was very pleased by it. It was very engrossing. The story was told in a very unique way where they utilized flashbacks, but it didn't get annoying. It always kept on course. It always had a goal in mind in this film. It knew what it wanted to be, a darker take on Superman. Now, some people don't like it, and they're entitled to that because everyone is entitled to their opinion. Everything, you know, in this world is open to interpretation, especially when it comes to movies. Different tones, different strokes for different folks. The old cliche there, I know. But it's true, you know. Some people like things to be more lighthearted. They feel depressed when watching dark movies like this. But I think, you know, when Nolan's involved, it ain't going to be, hey! You know, it's going to be dark. It's going to be foreboding. It's going to make you think. Very thought-provoking movie. Definitely will change your mind on how you view Superman. Alright, so yeah, I mean, this movie is a definite recommendation. They definitely did Superman justice, and, you know, I can already feel Superman Returns returning to my subconscious mind, where I don't have to think about it and probably never watch it again. Because with this movie here, and this definitely warrants a second viewing, and multiple viewings, you know, they threw in some other, like, tie-in teasers in there that you want to keep an eye out for, too. So, yeah, this definitely was an epic film, and it is masterpiece. Maybe not perfect, but it is as close to, you know, masterpieces, you know, as they're going to get if they want to have a film the quality of 1978. Just keep in mind, just don't make the mistake that a lot of critics do and, you know, do a direct comparison, you know, and expect that movie. Because if you're going into this film expecting 1978 Superman with Christopher Reeve, you're going to be very fucking disappointed. Okay, go see it.